Oh, thank you. I had a couple experiences today where I had that feeling of they're the cool kids and I'm not part of the club. And um
Yeah.
and feeling and the same sort of feeling of and I don't quite know how you get into those clubs. There's a part of me that hasn't quite figured out. Um, Yeah, it feels almost like there's a secret handshake. I think what we're trying to accomplish together is, well, really what Heather is talking about, decommodifying, decolonizing our our psyche and our relationships. And and that makes me think there's just a lot of healing that has to happen. And I think in terms of the process and the speed at which these things, there's a real tension, I think, between, well, I'll rephrase that. I think that part of decolonizing ourselves is getting off of the speed trap. And I think that affects our relationships. Um, that we really want to make these quick choices. We want it all to be neat and tidy and um, in or out, you know, uh, good or bad, in or out, with us or against us. And so there's a lot of unlearning, and slowing down is not a neutral process. It feels terrifying because the reason why we speed up is because there's this, if we don't go fast, bad things will happen. So, among the other things that we're doing on the surface, I think we're doing a lot of this, and then on at the deep work, it's about figuring out how to give ourselves the space to feel into all of those things. And I think it's important because at the core, I just finished reading Luke Kemp's Goliath's Curse, and the short form is what we call civilization is actually a mafia protection racket where a small number of people threaten everyone else and just like like a organized crime. It'd be a shame if this nice little setup you have had, caught fire, wouldn't it? And so you should probably pay me to not be mean to you. And we've just developed more subtle ways of letting the mafia bosses control us that way. And so, it really feels like the core of this is overcoming that fear. And somebody said brave. Oh, Becca, you talked about how, what we're doing is brave. And I think, yeah, I think really that's at the core, we're learning how to be brave again, how to be courageous and
Mhm.
stand up for the things that we love. And even if that means we have to risk ourselves. So, wow, I am feeling that I'm feeling that deep in my solar plexus. So, that was our first round of share, and we'll do once more through. What are you noticing in what everyone else is saying? What's standing out for you, either themes or just things that are bright and shiny? Back over to you, April.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted, April.
Oh, lost half my wisdom there already. Um, this is speaking to me of the fact that everybody pretty much needs to know how to do strategic retreats and to not make them a cutting off, but a simple backing away a little bit, or however you want to see it. But sometimes people retreat to friendship groups because they're tired or because they're realizing that they haven't always nurtured that and they don't they're trying to protect it somehow possibly. And I think distinguishing the difference between strategic retreats and cutting people off or disincluding people or whatever is part of the work. And it comes back to the thing that Ben has talked about before about the rest and about being a choir, and that we don't always have to be singing all the notes all the time really loud, and that we can take a breath, um, and somebody else will step in. Now, having people that understand that there's times to step forward and not step back is part of the riddle and is part of uh, the whole set of skills and tasks that we have, I think. Um, and maybe just talking about, the situations as they come up. I used to think I was your friend too, and now I'm not so sure. And last Thursday, I wanted to be part of your group, and now I don't, or whatever. Stuff does ebb and flow as well, but it's the ability to identify, I guess, for each of us what's going on, and then to see how it fits and to nudge around the pieces of the puzzle. And that's possibly what's different about this. And I'm hearing echoes of that in from everybody. And once again, I remind myself how articulate and wise this circle is. And over to Ronnie.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the depth of um, sharing here. And this is why the North Star is important, because I feel like we're all touching in on, feels kind of like a temperature check.
Mm.
And yeah, at least where I am, I feel like we've passed a point of no return. Um, things feel very precarious, very scary, and surreal all the time, most of the time. Maybe not when I'm sleeping. Sleep is a reprieve from it all, but yeah, it's where we are now. I knew 2 years ago this is where we're headed. Here we are. So yeah, it's just kind of a snapshot of where I am, I guess. Um, and I'm actively working on continuing to cultivate rest and healthy, whatever that means, forms of sustaining myself. uh, yeah, so I'm gonna keep on with that, doing my best. But yeah, and I think the last thing I'm noticing is kind of how lifeboat philosophy is something that I lean on internally a lot without even really thinking about it. Um, Farmer and the Horse, and kind of, oh, that didn't go how I thought it would go, and let's do an experiment, and um, everything is practice. Like these are things that I feel like are alive in me and are helping me a lot. Uh, so yeah, more practice is better. So I feel like we're doing that here in this space. And now my brain is feeling kind of mushy, so I'm going to pass to Becca.
Yeah, I appreciate the depth and vulnerability of the sharing. And I think I've been thinking about Lifeboat's relationship to the intentional communities movement. Do you all get Communities magazine? Maybe I'll send you a subscription. It's something I've had a pretty much almost continuous subscription to since the time I lived on a commune in the early 90s. And I was just looking at it. I don't always read it, but I was looking at it today. I still get the hard copy of it. And, it's intentional communities all over the mostly English speaking world, but also some other countries are represented in it. And um, there's one that's in Oregon called Lost Valley Education Center, and they had a big display ad that was like three pathways to transformation: internship, uh, something, and residency. And I was like, wow, this sounds a lot like what Life was doing. And so, and also, Heather, when you were speaking about community versus friendship groups, I was thinking about my co-housing group and like just how, people come into community with really high ideals, and then we don't know how to live them, or we don't realize our competing commitments that are unconscious to, and the ways we embody the old culture that we're trying to step out of or free ourselves and each other from. And slowing down. I've written, as part of my novel, there's an intentional community in it, and they live by what they call their timefulness manifesto. And it's basically like about how everything goes according to relationships, and relationships only move at the speed of trust, and trust requires understanding, and understanding requires paying attention, and paying attention requires presence, and presence requires slowing down. Like often requires slowing down. And um so I think, like, how do we discern when a sense of urgency is like actually grounded in here's what's happening and here's what it's time to do, and let's let go and jump or whatever, versus the deeply ingrained hyper capitalist productivity, speed at all costs. And I think about that a lot, but I don't really have answers, but I have questions.
Yeah.
Because even just in this conversation, I can feel myself like, wait, we have so much to do. Why are we spending all this time on this? And then of course other parts of me are like, oh, so important to connect at this level. So and some of my urgency is because there's a lot happening here, both politically and in my family, and my husband might at any point knock on my door and say, I need you to get off now. So just to let you know, nothing bad, just that's where he's at. Over to Roland.
I think the underlying thing that I am hearing, it has to do with change and that feeling of being on the knife edge when you're acutely aware of change happening. And that's all I want to say. Over to Heather.
Yeah, I'm listening to all of you, and my scattered mind is going in all kinds of different directions with this. And one of the things I want to say is that I didn't have this in my schedule. And then Ben said something, oh, I'll see you later. And I thought, oh, there's a meeting later. Okay, I better look up and see what's happening. And I got so confused with the coordination meeting, because this is a coordination committee for Lifeboat, and we have a coordination committee for Foodlands, and they often are meeting on the same day. And I get kind of really confused. And inadvertently, and I don't know how I did it, I sent out some kind of email from somewhere that I don't even know how to do, let alone feel I did, to say that the meeting was 1 o'clock, but you were all the people. It's like a bad dream. Do you know, one of those dreams that you can't kind of figure out what happened? And I thought, if these people are all meeting, I think that I'd really like to join them because these are my people. I mean, this is my community. I mean, I may not be close friends with all of you, but you recognize me as belonging to you as a group. So I'm I'm kind of feeling like that. I'm I'm defining that, and hearing you say, April, is that, yeah, our friendship groups, sometimes we need to retreat to them. It's just that if you are not part of that friendship group, you can feel really isolated and rejected. Like, what's with me that you didn't think about, like inviting me to this wonderful thing, which seems like everybody, it's not just a family, everybody else seems to be here. And what am I putting out? Am I putting out something that I don't belong, or I'm not following up and doing what people are expecting of me? And here is this meeting happening, and I just was not clear about whether I belong to this group or not. I'm with the finance and funding group, and I thought, well, we pulled them all together, but I thought we were separated now. So bear with me in my scattered mind and my confusion, and hope I can be accepted anyway, regardless of it.
Oh, Heather. You're not allowed to not belong here. Like so um and yeah, and I love your scattered mind. And I think there is something about, well, a little bit it is the farmer and the horse and the Roland's thing about the difference between falling and flying. And because a lot of what we're talking about, it's the same thing, I think, with the friendship groups and the retreating. And there's recognizing that the need for vulnerability, but the risk of vulnerability, it's that's the knife, that's one of the many knife edges of, what we are seeking, what heals from modernity. What kills in modernity is, and I just read this in Vanessa Andreotti's new book, it's the possibility of separability. So it's that fear that we're going to get cut. And in the fear of being cut, we do all of these defensive things that actually cut us. They keep us from being able to show up how we actually want to show up. And we think our true self isn't welcome, and only the persona is welcome. And so then you're kind of it's the loneliest thing is to be alone in a crowd, where you end up showing up in a group, but you don't really feel like you belong. And yeah, anyhow, Heather, you and I can have long conversations, I think, about, because there's also something about, actually, I think every one of us in what I know of us as individuals in our other lives, often showing up in a leadership role causes people to make all sorts of assumptions about you. And they don't want to, it's sort of like you don't want to hang out with the teacher, right? You don't want to hang out with the boss kind of thing. And so it's really hard to be in that role because it feels personal. That it's, I think people oftentimes are defending their persona. They don't want to they don't want to let their mask down in the face of somebody who they value their judgment. And so it's hard. Anyhow, I agree. I think balancing the need for actual urgency and then the time and space for things to grow as they need to grow. Roland's new expression to add to the you can't push a rope is you can't speed the harvest by tugging on the plant. And and the timely application of water and sunlight does in fact increase the speed the harvest. So let's move back into a somewhat more productive mode. Um, I take that back. That was entirely productive. Let's move into an oriented towards tasky thing. So what I have on our agenda is primarily a check-in on the outreach plan, and a whole bunch of stuff has been produced, has moved forward, and there are a lot of things that are sort of half-open loops. So I thought we should start with just a check-in on progress. And I want to go last, just to hear, and I think what I'm going to do is popcorn, and let people chime in with updates that they would like to make on things they've been working on. And then I'll come in and add some. Does that make sense? Roland? You're
Can we
muted.
do just a the a redo of the intro that we didn't do?
Oh, for the recording.
Yes.
So only to let people know that here we are in the coordination circle for the Lifeboat Academy. Today's date is October 16th. And we are, and actually to Heather's point, that we are still in our augmented summer schedule, and where we have combined our circles with the idea that this gives us an opportunity to really coordinate everyone together in the same room. And then if we need to, we can kind of revert to our circles, artwork and finance and outreach where those tasks make sense. And we're hoping that a lot of that work can happen asynchronously. And if we need a meeting, we can set a meeting. So that's where we are. And we've done our land acknowledgement, our check-in questions, and revisited our North Star. And now we're ready to look at our agenda. And thank you, Roland, so much for that. That really helped put me back on track. And so in terms of our agenda, I think the main topic is the fall outreach and updates on where things are at. And I'm going to actually, here's what I'm going to do is combine it. We usually do a check-in on the agenda. Is there anything that you'd like to add? And I'll do that and say, and if there are any quick updates that you want to offer as we go through, we'll do that. So I'll pass it over to April. Anything to add to the agenda and anything that you want to do a quick update on? Nothing to add, no updates? Alrighty. So then over to Ronnie.
Nothing to add, I don't think. I did compile a one-pager for presentations, which I just forgot to check off. I got feedback back from Ben, which basically said one-pager looks good, and let's do a one-pager for each of the categories on the one-pager. So 4 more one-pagers, interspersing actual like basically FAQs for each type of investor on each one-pager. So I will work on that soon, hopefully this weekend. If anybody hasn't seen the one-pager I did email it out to at least Ben, Roland, April, and maybe some other people, but I think it was mostly the three.
Yeah.
Four of us. And it had the story seeds, like one story seed for each investor type.
And a QR code that links to the webpage.
Yes, thank you. A QR code for each one that corresponds to a page on the website. So I also need to add more info on the website. Well, we need to go through the website, I think.
Yeah.
That might be a good thing to add is a website review in the context of we are actively going to be sending people to these web pages. Does the information on them make sense? I think that's all I have for now. I will pass to Becca.
I don't have anything to add right now.
Well, I don't know if I have anything to add, but I have been um I gave some feedback on the story seeds, and I compiled the a warm allies list for the next step, which is how to put it into like putting it into a CRM. So I've consolidated the Lifeboat Academy email and the woofer list, and what was the third one that you sent me, Ben?
Fresh
Fresh
sales.
Desk. Fresh Desk.
Fresh desk. Yeah.
Yeah. So I put them all together, and yeah, so that, and I've also been communicating with people, some of you, and some of you I have not yet communicated with, to get testimonials for to use. So sort of like 2 lines about what the Lifeboat Academy and or the Pharmastery means to you, and what was your experience, what has been your experience, kind of thing. And I've sent out 9 so far, and I got 8 responses, like 8 completed um, testimonials. Some that were much larger than the 2 lines, and then I took them and shrunk them down, and then checked in with the person who sent it, who gave me the thumbs up. So we've got 2. I count that as having 2 separate, one longer testimonial, and then one that is just 2 lines that can be used for different things with permission. The last thing I need to do is check in with people to see if they want to be anonymous or initials or their full name. So I still have that to do. And then that's all I can think of. Oh, and I've been going through the prospectus documents, and I commented on the shorter one, and then whatever things I had to talk about on the shorter one, I think I don't. Anyway, the longer ones look great because what I wanted to talk about is already on the shorter one. So I started small and I'm going larger, and I'm on the largest one now, and I'm not quite done. And I was curious for Ronnie. I wasn't, when I got the email, and I maybe read it too fast. I didn't know if you wanted feedback from everybody, or if you were just letting us know that you had forwarded it to Ben in April. So if there's still time, and if it would still be useful, I could also look at the one pager. So over to Heather.
Yeah, so I don't have anything to add or report. So I'll just pass it to you, Ben.
Cool. Um, yeah, so I think that the one pager, there's a couple things that I think can combine in discussion as we move forward. I know some of you, I've seen comments coming in on the story seeds. And so that's what? Oh, sorry. Um, I see that there's feedback coming in on the story seeds, and there's, I think, a kind of weaving together of some of these different materials. Um, so I don't know if people had a chance to look at it, but I did consolidate the engagement playbook. So now it has more details, and it really, I think, from my perspective, it could be like, here is your manual for if you're going to do outreach for the Lifeboat Academy. Here are how we think about our audiences. Here are some template emails. Here are some things that you can ask for. Here's how the CRM fits in, and what are some of the things that we're tracking. So I believe that is ready to go as a manual. And of course, the testing will be in us applying it. And so one of the next steps I want to talk about is how do we kind of roll that out. Similarly with the CRM, I think we have a good enough for now model of in Airbase, in an online database of the CRM that we can start to actually use. Definitely good enough to start to move forward on it. And as a process, what I was thinking is rather than trying to automatically upload a lot of our contacts, that Roland has compiled it, it's a down and dirty list, but it's pretty much all of the contacts that we've gathered. And at this point, it's definitely good enough for I guess what I'm thinking about is it's sort of like it's a bucket and we take a scoop out of it and we put it in one scoop at a time in the CRM rather than doing some sort of mass upload and then having a whole whack of things in there and having to, get overwhelmed by it. So what I'm thinking is as we move forward, we've talked about a process where we gather together anybody who's willing to work on some of that outreach stuff, that we actually schedule regular meetings that are focused just on that part of the work. And that one of the first steps is we prioritize a handful that we can take on in the next X period, week or two. And then for those people, we add them to the CRM, we do the outreach, and we document the contact. So we're really, just building it step by step. So in that sense, I think that really we've compiled our warm allies list as, on the way to creating the CRM. And then, and the way that this all fits together is a lot of these materials are, of course, are meant to be follow-up when we contact somebody if they have questions. And so, as I looked through the engagement playbook, it's actually really simple. There's only 4 things that we're asking people to do, maybe 5 things. We're asking mavens if they would be willing to host a presentation for us or share our information with their group. We're talking to previous guests to get testimonials and referrals. There are some asks that go across the board, and it doesn't matter whether somebody is a potential timeshare or lifeboat builder or a benefactor. We want to ask them if they have somebody else that they can recommend, right? So everybody, one of the things is there anybody else that we should talk to? For mavens, it's basically also would they host a presentation for us? For potential benefactors, it is, are you willing to invest money? And for timeshares, the same. Are you willing? Is this something that you'd like to be involved in? And then for lifeboat builders and mentors, it's sussing out where are they early lifeboat builders? And that defines one kind of support. And I'm kind of thinking just a down and dirty language, mentors means anybody who's actually been doing some lifeboat building work. They have some experience doing it, they're a mentor. And people who are really just trying to get their foot in and figure out how to do it, they're lifeboat builders. All of that's I'm getting distracted by myself, but there aren't many things that we're asking people to do. And for each of those asks, there are likely some questions. What does that mean? And so what we really need is to make sure that we have the answers to questions, as many as we can anticipate, that we have those available and we say, here, this is what that means. So the prospectus and the investment pyramids have been updated, and including industry standard conversion rates for each of the stages. So from a prospect to curious to cultivating the relationship to the actual ask, those conversion numbers. And I've created a conservative one and a hopeful one. Because most of those industry standards are sort of a low end and a high end of conversion factors. Um, and the bottom line is, in theory, if all of the assumptions hold, we only need to contact between 750 and 2,000 people to find all of our investors and all of our timeshare people and, fill all of the slots that we want to fill. So those seem, I was nervous about kind of calculating those numbers, but that seems very doable. And our rough list is at 580. A lot of that's garbage, but because it sort of captures anybody's email. But there's probably a solid 300 people on our list who know what we're doing, are interested in to some degree, and so are already kind of up the funnel from, they're not just a raw prospect. They're actually people who we have reason to believe are warm and friendly to us. So, one way of thinking about it is we probably have half the contacts that we need already. And it shouldn't really be that big a challenge to expand the pool. And especially because a lot of our contacts are actually fairly well networked. So, in terms of priorities, in terms of for outreach, I think the place we want to start is with mavens, with people who represent networks who might be able to introduce us to other people. And so that's the update on the investment pyramid. And then the prospectus, I did a little work with Aiden, and basically I fed in our old prospectus with all of the sort of updated conversations we've had about pitches and that sort of thing. And Aiden generated three different versions of the prospectus. And I think I shared it somewhere. I think I just shared it in Slack, but I can share it in email. And the three versions are, there is a short, warm toned version. There is a short, institutionally toned version, and there is a full version, a long version. And the both of the short versions say exactly the same thing, but it's kind of fun to read them sort of in parallel, because it is exactly the same information, but it's just, grant writer speak versus how you would talk about it to a friend. And then the long version, I've been thinking about it as like the long version has more details. The short version gives you a gist of everything, and then the longer version actually gives a little bit more. There's still one page per section, kind of thing. So those are done. The only thing left to really do in updating the existing investment materials are redoing all of the numbers behind it, and that's really just updating for changes in prices, and some refinement around what can we expect for retreats and things like that. So, um, but generally speaking, I think we have the materials that we need to move forward. I don't think there's anything we can tweak things forever and ever, but right now I think we mostly have what we need. And then, as Ronnie was saying, I think it would be really handy to have um, on the website, we've got a page for each of those stakeholder groups where it starts with the story seed. And I think all we really want to do is add some of the basic FAQs that we're expecting. And I think we have all the answers. It's just a matter of identifying the questions and having a short, nice, concise version for the answer. I've just downloaded a whole bunch. So let's do once around thoughts, questions, reactions. Everything's good for the cause. So April, over to you.
It really feels good that there's a shape to the stuff and a framework, and that it's kind of in some ways obvious what the next steps are with this. I do find the numbers 750 to 2,000 seem like big numbers this week.
Mhm.
It's not as big as it looks, probably. And as you
Mhm.
mentioned, we've already got a whole potload of good contacts already. And if we're real strategic about using those, then, as you also said, the other ones should come from the networking of those 300. And I think bearing that in mind is real important so that we start to see that we're using the capacity of social media and influencing really to do this process. Where would I find the engagement playbook?
It's on the Google Drive.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all I have.
And I will follow up this meeting with an email with links to everything we've talked about here. So there's one source where you can click on everything.
Thank you. Over to Ronnie.
There's a lot here. It's really amazing and comprehensive. Um, I I feel like the the one pagers with FAQs for each investment type correspond to the website having FAQs. Like it's just going to be like having the same information in many places.
Yep.
Um, so I can, as I work on the one pagers with FAQs, I guess I can send those out for feedback. Do you have more FAQs to add? Once we feel like we've kind of got a collection for each one, I can start putting them on the website. If that seems like a good enough for now process. I don't want to put them everywhere before they've been reviewed, because then that just makes double work for myself. Um, yeah, and I'll take a look at the prospectus, the updated prospectus too, to kind of help provide some of the answers. Uh, yeah, that's those are my reflections for now. Over to Becca.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work has been done. I haven't actually reviewed any of it except the story seeds. And can't promise to you, but you can send it to me. And I I think at this point I need to get going, but I sort of feel like my role is waiting to hear a request, like, would you meet with me with this person, from Ben or whomever, and happy to do that. Um, and thank you all for all the fabulous work you're doing. And I'm sorry I'm not available to do more right now. Over to Roland.
Yes. I was wondering also about, okay, and you've already said that I'm looking forward to the what you're going to send at the end of the meeting to help situate us in the sequence and where where bodies are needed, where people are needed. I was also thinking about we've got probably about 550 people contacts in the CRM right now. And that's just people contacts from the Lifeboat Academy and from Ben primarily. I think a little bit from Ronnie. And so um, I don't know if this would be useful, but if any of you, and maybe we can also mention it to Becca, have anyone to add, and maybe with a definition of what the categories are, what a maven is and such. And if there's any that you want to add, you can send them to me and I can add them to the list. And maybe what I'll do is I'll also check in with each of you individually, just to create that link, and do whatever to try to help to keep things that in mind. So that I'm proposing to do that, if that makes sense to do. Over to Heather.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to reading all of this. It looks really great, and particularly the stories and whatever, just so that I can be caught up to steam. And then once I kind of have a better idea about the categories, and then I may have some names that I could contribute to or pass on to you. But yeah, I have just not been up to date on all of the work you've been doing, which is really fantastic. Thank you for that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've got to say I'm really excited about the prospectuses, prospecti, um, platypuses that especially the short warm tone one. Um, it just sings to me, and I don't know if other it's a I don't know if other people will get it, but this is exactly why I want to do this and what I think we're doing. It lays it all out. What's the
Right.
challenge? Who are we talking to? What are we proposing? And it also weaves together the why are we bothering with the commons, why it's not just about food production, but that food production is essential, and the pharmastery and the academy and how it weaves together. And at least for me, I just read it and was like, yes. So I'm excited for feedback from other people on that as well. And April, and this is going to be, I wonder if I can describe the math the right way. The 7,500 to 2,000 people is uh, names that we could contact.
Right.
The 300 that we have are probably 2 or 3 clicks up the funnel.
Right.
And so those 300 actually probably represent more like 1,000 contacts already, because they get, halved and quartered and that sort of thing when they move from a prospect to a curious. So, if those 300 are 2 clicks up the funnel, then they probably represent at least, yeah, they probably represent something like 1,000 people already,
Great.
that we need from that 2,000 number. So yeah, I was worried about it, knowing how the math worked. And then when I worked it back, I was like, oh, we are actually in a really good position.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
This reminds me of when we were setting up a newsletter for Foodlands, and I looked and I had 1,800 contacts myself personally, and I think, oh my God. So I went through that whole 1,800 and took away the ones I knew had passed away already and the ones I couldn't remember, and they were from the government or whatever it is. And I got it down to probably about 300 or 400 that I actually believed would be really interested in what Foodlands was doing.
Hmm.
And then in the process of that, I actually selected 100 that I really wanted to find out what they were doing. Like the
Okay.
100 were
Yeah.
Heather's top 100
Hmm.
of people I'd lost track of, but I didn't want to. So I think it's a similar kind of process. And
Yeah.
as we go through the process together, just it'll clean up our list. We will be
Yeah.
really focused on who it is that we think are part of our community and that kind of thing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
practical way of doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I have a similar feeling too, is in my mind, it has been morphing from an outreach list to a community list. And this is also where the 1, 9, and 90. So our CRM has built into it the 1, 9, and 90 interests. So one of the things that we're trying to find out when we talk to people is what is their 1% interest, their 9% interest, and their 90% interest.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that gives us all sorts of ways of connecting with people and
Uh-huh.
connecting people, right? Like when we find the person we know over here who's got a 1% and the person over here has got a 1% and they don't know each other, we can be the people
Yeah,
who introduce them. And that's what the network is supposed to be about.
yeah.
So yeah, anyhow, I feel like we're coming close to time and we have a pretty good list for next steps already generated. So Ronnie's going to keep working on the FAQs, the one pagers, and that's also the FAQs. Determining the FAQs is definitely Aiden kind of stuff. Being able to put in what do we think the follow-up questions are going to be. Um, We've got some specific steps on the CRM part. We've got some review work generally just to make sure everyone's up to speed on the prospecti or whatever the plural is. And I will enhance facilitate that by sending out the email with the links and a little, sort of if you read only one of these, read this one, and if you read two, read these and what some of the next steps might be there. So I'm going to do our classic closing. So once around, are there any last unfinished bits of business? Lack of clarity on next steps, a thought about a next step, or a question about something. So that'll be the first round, and then we'll just do a closing round. So April, over to you. Any unfinished business?
No, not at the moment, but once I review all the materials and really understand what the process is, there may be some things dangling for me, but I'll speak up if so. Thank you. Over to Ronnie.
According to the internet, the plural of prospectus is prospectuses.
Perspective.
Is kind of
Who would have
more-
known?
I don't love it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. That's all. Over to Becca.
Oh, she's gone. So over to Roland.
I just need to know if I have not done something that I said I was going to do because I need frequent reminders. And I feel like I'm supposed to do something with the engagement playbook, but I can't remember what that is.
Hmm.
But if you can't remember what it is, then I might be just imagining it because I feel like I'm supposed to do more than I'm doing.
That may be.
Okay, I will let it go then. Yay!
Hey, let it go.
Over to Heather.
Well, I'm the same way. And I also agree with April, is that I just need to be more informed so that I can be more helpful.
Awesome.
To you, Ben.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really so just to put it out there, um, I am what I am hoping for is first and foremost that people want presentations. And we've got three really the presentation that April and I did, I think, is one that I want to share. And then there's the DIY building your lifeboat, and then there's the Pharmastery pitch deck, and they all rock, I think. And so what I am hoping is that we start to find, and that's I think if I want to the seed I want to plant is if I could have only one thing for Christmas, it would be that you connect me with people who want the presentations. And I think if we can start to do those presentations, everything will flow fairly naturally and dare I say effortlessly from those. So That's my checkout. I don't think I have any unfinished business, but let me just do once around last thoughts for the good of the cause as a way of closing out. So April, over to you. Last thoughts?
Last thoughts. As always, grateful to be part of the process. And I have to say, I'm leaving with a warm, fuzzy feeling about how much has been done and the fact that we are moving forward on this in as brave a way as we can at the minute. So that feels authentic, I guess. That's it for me. Over to Ronnie.
Good meeting. Over to Roland.
I have a question that I forgot to ask earlier. What do we do? Is there anything to do with the comments that are coming in around the story seeds?
I don't know. I haven't seen the comments.
Okay.
I will take April's I will look at them and then I will determine
Well,
what needs to happen.
okay, so that answers my question that you will be looking at them. It's not a group of people or anything. You'll be looking at them and okay, cool.
I mean, it's going to it will, this is where, Ronnie and I will probably go back and forth around the one pagers and the story, and the comments on that. So other eyes will see it. And, but I think, yeah, I'm not sure what the comments are. If they're minor things like I noticed a typo or, what could we do, say this instead of that, then, we'll just make those changes and move on.
Cool.
Yeah,
Over to Heather.
yeah. And I'm about to get up and go next door to the potluck. Michael has made the potluck for me. So I'm good on that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and have a good night and maintain contact.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.